Guru Poornima. It's just such a wonderful, wonderful festival, Guru Poornima. And I'm trying to remember back to the first Guru Poornima, but I can't. So I'll just say the first time when Swami asked us, what is a guru? And, you know, we coming from the West, I raised my hand and I said, teacher, Swami, teacher. So he said, no. And so then we offered all other suggestions as to what is a guru. And finally Swami said, a guru is a one who removes ignorance, one who gives light. And in our lives, he's done just that. So first, pranams to the lotus feet of our Swami. Not only our guru, but our guardian, our guide, our God, because we believe he's the form of God manifest on earth. Even though his form is not here at this moment, he's everywhere. Like this song. This song we used to teach the children. He is everywhere. Feel him shining within you. He is. And our last visit, when we went to visit the Samadhi, before we left and we were sitting in the room looking out in the courtyard, just the breath of the wind said, I'm everywhere. This had such significance for me because Swami has told me since 1973, find me in your heart, find me in your heart, find me in your heart. And I would say, no, Swami, I want to see you just like this. And finally, after 40 years, I got the lesson, find me in your heart. And now I know he's not only in my heart, but all of your hearts. And he's not only in our hearts, he's in the very building. He's in every tree, every stone, every creature. He's everything. He's everywhere. So don't ever forget that. Now we're going to tell you some stories, because it's Guru Poornima. And Guru Poornima is a time for sharing stories of the Guru. And in the olden days, if we go back to old days, it was the custom to give the Guru dakshina when he taught you your lessons and you were leaving the ashrams. So this year, I'm asking, what will be your gift to Swami this year? And not only am I restricting you to giving him one gift for Guru Dakshina, every Guru Poornima, every birthday, every Shivaratri, you're going to give him something. You may choose to give up a bad habit, but whatever it is, give him his Guru Dakshina, because he came and made such a difference in each of your lives. Now, one of the most moving stories, please. Thank you. I'll take it. One of the most moving stories of Guru Dakshina is Krishna and Balarama and their teacher, Sandipiri, and what they gave him for their Guru Dakshina. If you haven't read it or you don't know the story, I'm not going to tell you. I'm an old SSC teacher, so I'm going to give you the homework. And that is to read Bhagavata Vahini. And in the last part, Sukha narrates so many of the Krishna Leelas. And one of them is the most moving, where Krishna and Balarama get the Dakshina for Sandipati. And it brings tears to your eyes. So give yourself that joy. Read it, Bhagavata Vahini, Swami's Bhagavata Vahini. The only other book I'll assign to you, I think when I was in Connecticut, 10, 12, Ramesh, how long ago were we in Connecticut? That many years ago, I told everybody to read Prema Vahini. Now, you're probably all new people. You never heard me say that. But if you have, no, you do have. Just do. Like Swami used to tell us, don't try, do. Read Prema Bahini. It's the only other book other than your family scripture that you'll need. Everything Swami wanted to tell us is in Prema Bahini. And if you've just glanced at it, you know. So you don't have to read it all at one time. Read a chapter a week. If that's too much, read a paragraph every other day. But take the information in, let it fill your heart. It will change your life. It gave me one of my favorite prayers. Lord, I've come. Lord, I can't. The prayer's gone, but it'll come back. Anyway, it says, Lord, I've come to the end of my rope, so to speak. Please give me strength. And if you're ever raising children, that's a good prayer, because they will test your patience, but that's part of their job. Now, we're supposed to tell you stories of devotion. That's what we were asked for. Deep devotion, past and present. And deep devotion in the past, to me, meant unwavering faith and trust and love in the being that we call Satya Sai Baba. But deep devotion in the past also is stories of people like Mirabai and others, so many whose names that you know in all faiths. They had love and devotion for God that carried them through many situations. Deep devotion now, you have so many examples. I was teasing Al earlier. Some time ago, the symphony was going to perform and put a party. And Al got word that the symphony was performing, and he wanted so much to be a part of it. Now, you know Al plays the violin, but I think it was that he hadn't played for a while, but he wanted to be second violinist in the symphony. So he went and found a teacher to teach him, to bring him up to date, because he already had the training, but to bring him up to date so that he could play in the symphony orchestra before Swami. Now this was devotion, because that teacher was expensive, because he was, a world-renowned maestro kind of teacher. So Al went and he played, and when it came time for the symphony to perform, there was Al in the symphony on the stage, playing with the orchestra. Well, they did a good job. It was beautiful. And afterwards, Swami walked around and gave them all white scarves. He individually gave them scarves. We teased him, of course. But then afterwards, to show Swami's grace, a picture came out in Sanatana Saradi a few months later, and there is Swami handing out a scarf in the picture for the whole world to see. His devotion led him to make that sacrifice and do. Devotion, I think of Vasantrai, is that his name? We had a musician in Queens, his name was Vasantrai. He loved Swami. And in fact, when he played for birthday, Swami's vibhuti feet would appear. They appeared on the cloth after he finished. Now Vasant got very, very ill, and he had to go to the hospital. And Vasant got very, very, very ill, and he asked his wife, he said, please don't let me die here. I want to go back to India to die. So his wife, and they had 4 children, and just them, and the Sai family, of course. She said, we'll see. So she just prayed to Swami, because she had no one else. Her family objected to, I won't say the marriage, maybe the spiritual belief in that they had a different teacher. And so they weren't too supportive. So when it was time to go to India, she had no help at all. And to top matters off, the hospital called and said he has like 3 days. She went to the hospital. Fortunately, she had an Indian doctor, and the doctor told her, if you want to get him to India before he leaves, you have to take him now. Just like that. So she said, Swami, what can I do? Please help me. She started doing her Gayatri. She said that she said the Gayatri the whole way. They got him into a taxi. Because he's Indian citizen, Air India had to take them. So, because no other airline would sell her a ticket. So, got on to Air India. This is all within 24 hours. Sai devotees helped them get to the airport, get them off to India. Soon as they got to India, they got the cab to Puttaparthi. Soon as they reached Puttaparthi, Swami let them come up on the veranda. It wasn't even time for him to come out yet, but he sent word out to bring him to the veranda. And then Swami came out. She said that she hadn't stopped doing her Gayatris the whole time until she actually saw Swami's figure, had his darshan. That was the measure of her devotion. So Swami came out and he blessed them. He blessed the son, he blessed his wife, and the children. The son didn't die then. Swami gave him 1 more year. And he asked him, 1 more year? And the son nodded. They stayed in Puttaparthi another year. She did seva until he passed. And then he passed in Puttaparthi, which was his dream. So we have examples of such devotion now, today, just as we had in the old days. And devotion can be expressed in so many different ways. It can be seva. Can't tell your mother I'm telling this story? Okay, because she'll go. We have a friend, and she goes for seva every single Saturday. Rain, snow, sleet, she's right there. And not only does she do the seva, giving out the food and everything, she goes and picks up food from the bakery, bread store, whoever's willing to give for the seva projects in North Jersey. Unknown to her, she had become so well known for doing this that down in South Jersey, when we went to visit, they said, do you know that lady, Nellie, of North Jersey? And I said, yes, we do. Is it true that she goes anywhere in North Jersey and cooks and serves for the poor? I said, not only that, she goes into Manhattan too. So you see what you do. This is just love and devotion. Whatever you do spreads out, whether you know it or not, whether you want it to or not. It's just His grace to you. When we first went to see Swami, our hearts were full of devotion. Now, Bisu saw him early. I just have to correct the history a tiny bit. I went in 73 with the group that was going to become the Brooklyn Center. We didn't know it then, but it was a group of 8 of us that left from Brooklyn. We picked up 1 more in India. So a group of 9 of us went to see Baba. And our own love was such. We had been looking for, we were looking for Jesus because we thought the world couldn't exist without His presence. Just like now, we know the world can't exist without God's presence. So we went looking, and we came across this man called Satya Sai Baba. Some friends told us about him. So we went to see him, and we were so happy to go. India, had never been out of the country, never been anywhere, straight from Brooklyn onto an airplane, and off we went. It never occurred to me that Swami would not speak English. Our devotion was so simple. We just didn't know. It never occurred to me that he would speak Italian to one of the men's fathers. It was like, yes, he's God. He can speak anything. And he proved it. He talked to us in English. He talked to Mr. Giufiori in Italian, had him translate for an Italian group. And his love showed us miracles. That was his measure of love for us. And I want to say one of the first miracles, I didn't consider it a miracle then, but I do now, because I had the kids, my daughter and my godson with me. And Swami, in his grace and mercy, he made vibhuti. The three of us are sitting right in front of him, even closer than you are. And he did like this. He said, "What do you want?" Only the old timers have heard this story, so I can repeat it. He said, "What do you want?" And I had been schooled before I left. I knew freedom, moksha, mukti. I knew those words. So I said, "Moksha." So he waved his hand. He made us vibhuti, and the kids, they were 11 and 14. And they said, "What is it?" I said, "Just eat it. It's called vibhuti. Just eat it." So they, "What is it? Powdered peanuts?" Swami, in his grace and mercy, had made peanut butter flavored vibhuti. I've never had it since in the next 40 years. I've never had it since. But what flavor would you give an American child? Peanut butter. And he did, and they ate it. So, "What do you want?" And I figured, I said, moksha, whichever one I said first. I said moksha, mukti, and so I said mukti. He says, mukti. So he waved his hand, and he made us little lockets, little triangle-shaped lockets. And it's very nice, very nice. He put it in that. "What do you want?" And I figured I'm not saying the words right, because, I don't speak anything but Brooklyn. So I said, freedom, Swami, freedom. So he said, "Oh, freedom. Come back tomorrow, 9:30. And that was the beginning of our adventure with Swami. Now, later, when we come home, that's when we met Hilda. And we were so happy to have a meeting to run to where the people knew about Sai Baba. Because as far as we were concerned, only the 8 of us there in Brooklyn knew or heard of him. And that's when we finally ran to Hilda's, because she knew, and they had a whole big group. And that's where we met. You see, this is what happens. I remember once, you see how Swami says, space age karma. Whatever you do is going to come back to you this lifetime. You don't have to wait for the next lifetime. So we went to a lecture once and put a party, and everybody knows Rita Bruce and her hubby. And his name was up for a lecture, but Rita was sitting there with him. So what his part of the lecture was to introduce his wife, because ladies weren't allowed to speak and put her up. So he introduced Rita, and Rita started talking, and she talked the whole hour. So I said, "Oh, Bisu, did you see that? He didn't get a chance to talk at all." She talked the whole time. And don't you know, when we went to Pennsylvania to talk together, who talked the whole time? It's so true. So the karma comes right back. So be careful what you put out there, because it will, he said, space age karma for us. So it will come back. And you know why? Because in his love and grace, he wants to clean us up so we're ready to go. So you shouldn't have to keep going through this human experience. You can become fully human now, so you can become divine, which is your destination. So Swami made us this peanut butter vibhuti, and we were, laughing and talking about it, and we had to put a party. We were fortunate to follow him. I'm still back in 73 now, and Mary, Reverend Mary, is one of the ladies that was with us, and her hubby, and the rest, and my daughter. The rest were men, and we're saying, as we're sitting there, I wonder if we'll see any miracles. I wonder if we'll see any miracles. And this Italian family had come, and they had a disabled child. Their devotion was so strong. They had gone through all the churches in Rome and the holy places in Italy, but the child was still disabled. And he was sitting in his stroller, lolling, and they brought him, and Swami called them in. And I said, they are really brave. They don't speak English. They don't speak any Indian language. And they've traveled all the way from Italy to put a party. Now, put a party then is not the put a party you see now with the beautiful decorated buildings. Put a party then was on a little hill, the green building, plain, government-looking building, no wall, no fences, one housing unit, West 1, and what is just half of West 1. No Poornima, no Kalwantal, no nothing. Okay, that was no stores. That was put a party then. And here these people had come and brought this baby, a young boy who was about 4. They took him in. Swami talked with them a long time. So we were waiting, to see when they come out, what's going to happen. So they rolled the baby out, and he was asleep. So Mary and I and the kids went back up to the room to come down for afternoon darshan. We came down in the afternoon, and there's this kid throwing the sand all over from the piles, moving all the little rocks around that had been gathered for us to carry for the base of the Poornima. And I said, that child deserves a little spanking. It was the same child. Swami had done that. Had given these people, because of their devotion, the wish of their heart, a normal child. Anybody who has children, be thankful for your children. Be thankful for their health. Be thankful for them as they are. And when I heard the little one singing, it just did my heart so good. Because I taught SSE for many, then it was called Balvikas, for many years. And I've watched them grow. You want to talk here? Keep going. Okay, one more story from the past, and then we'll come to the present. One of my favorite Bible stories is when this man is brought to see Jesus, and his friends, there's such a crowd around Jesus that his friends he's ill, and they're carrying him on a stretcher. But there's such a crowd they can't get to him. So they carry him up on the roof of the house where Jesus was, and they lower him down through the opening in the ceiling so that Jesus can bless him. So we're sitting there, little tiny, now I would call it tiny crowd compared to what happens later. And these men drive up on the lady's side. There's no fences, just sitting like this. They drive the car up right near where we're sitting, but they carry out a man who's obviously disabled. And they carry him on the stretcher up to the veranda. Swami opens the door, and they take him inside. I said, oh, Mary, look, that's sort of like the Bible story of the men, the friends who bring their friend to see Jesus. I said, well, we'll sit and wait and see what happens. So we're waiting, and we're waiting, and we're waiting. It's getting near lunchtime, and we're waiting. And finally, the door opens. But before that, we had said maybe Swami's, telling them he won't do anything or he doesn't want to do anything at this time, and he's helping them to realize, this situation. You know how we think we know everything. So that's what we're talking. And all of a sudden, Swami's door opens, and the man steps out. He's walking with the aid of a long stick. And first, he takes 3 steps, and you could see he's like happy. Our happiness bubbles up because he's so happy. He takes a few more steps, and he just can't hold it anymore. Jai Sai Ram! Jai Sai Ram! He starts shouting, and so we figured that's okay. We said Jai Sai Ram also, until he walked off the veranda. And then the car pulled around. They all got back in the car and drove off. That was the measure of their devotion at that time. You loved Swami so much that you wanted to do what he said. We just really did. If he said pray, we prayed. If he said meditate, we tried to do our meditation. And then he said, don't try, do. So that's what we do in our lives. Jesus said, love thy neighbor as thyself. Seems simple. I've forgotten the quote from Rabbi Akiva, but it's along the same lines. Swami says, help ever, hurt never. Too easy, right? No. In practice, we think people are different. And we even sometimes tell our children, not those people, not this group. If you look at children, they're pure. Don't poison them with prejudice and bias. They come into the world, you see a group of 2 and 3 and 4-year-olds, they're all playing together, tumbling over each other, running, and they'll be that way until you teach them different. Right now we have a yard full of kids. Where we live is like the units are around a yard, and all the children, we just inherited a bunch of kids. I don't know. Bisu says it rains and they sprout up out of the ground. And they're all different kinds of children. And they play and they run. And the other day they were practicing being sirens, police sirens. Oh, that was very helpful. We think we'll have to teach them a new game. But until someone tells them different, they will play with each other, go to school together, make firm friendships for the rest of their lives. And they won't see differences that we may see as adults, that we now have to unlearn so we don't catch any more karma. Part of being fully human, heading toward the road to divine, is knowing that God is in every single one. Now, Swami says you don't have to associate with bad company. In fact, he says run from bad company, so you can teach them that differentiation. But you don't lump a group of people together and say this group or that group is different or bad. Everybody belongs to God, including you. And you're just as special as the next person. Oh. All right. We're all at different stages in our development. And we were wondering, how can we further? Swami, how do we pray? How do we further ourselves, advance, enhance our devotion? And back in 1983, Swami gave us a beautiful prayer. It's in Dr. Hislop's My Baba and I. And it's a beautiful prayer. In fact, he wrote it just for us. We happen to use it in the morning, but it can be used at any time of the day. I think you know it, but I'll read it for you anyway, even though I know it by heart. O Lord, take my love and let it flow in fullness or devotion to thee. O Lord, take my hands and let them work incessantly for thee. O Lord, take my soul and let it be merged in one with thee. O Lord, take my mind and thoughts and let them be in tune with thee. O Lord, take my everything and let me be an instrument to work. What more can you say? Is there any religion that does not apply to? It applies to everyone. He made it so that it's generic and yet very devotional. That's his gift to us, to help us reach the goal that he set for us. Maybe your Guru Dakshina can be to remember to pray to God in thankfulness for his grace to you. Maybe your Guru Dakshina could be, you're not going to get angry. You're not going to express prejudice. It can be anything. It's a gift of love that you're giving him. I have to tell you one more old story. It's good having an audience of newer people. The old people like you and Ramesh, of course, have heard all, and all of you back there, have heard all these old stories, because we used to come up to Connecticut now and then and share some of these old stories. But one more old story. And people would say, well, how did you find this teacher, and how did you only go to him, things like that. Reverend Mary and I were sitting, had gone for a 75 meeting, and at that time we were helping with the Poornima. You carried rocks and sand on a bag, and you carried it over and dumped it in a pile. Rocks and sand, 2 ladies each side, dump it in a pile. You pass it down, you dump it in a pile. And you know who was digging? Heidi King. Yeah, I would say, these bags are coming fast. Who's up there digging like that? What girl? Let me go see. And it turned out to be one of our old friends, Heidi King. Her story is in Dr. Hislop's book. She and her father were in the car where the 2 cars were coming head on. And Swami took care of that. He put one over there and one over here. So she was the one doing the digging. And we were sitting in the Poornima because they were having a meeting.